The date is November the 5th, 2001. It's a Monday. Milan's head coach, Fatih Terim, boards a flight from Milan to Istanbul in the afternoon to attend a conference on leadership and team building. The bad news reaches Terim in Istanbul, where he is informed via a phone call that he has been dismissed from his position. The reason behind Milan management's sudden decision would soon become clear. Parma had reached an agreement with Carlo Ancelotti to take over as their head coach. The deal was only awaiting signatures. Within that 24-hour window, Milan Vice President Adriano Galliani sprang into action and managed to change Carlo's mind. The very next day, Ancelotti was introduced to the press as Milan's new manager. Galliani, brimming with excitement, declared, "Milan is back in the hands of the Milanisti." Carlo Ancelotti had played midfield in the late 80s under Arrigo Sacchi, the mastermind behind the legendary Milan side. Though he didn't shine as brightly as the Dutch trio, he was still a vital cog in the system that claimed back-to-back European titles. After retiring, he interned under Sacchi during his tenure with the Italian national team, then went on to manage Reggiana, Parma, and Juventus. At the time, Carlo was 41 years old. He had yet to achieve anything major in his career, but his results showed promise. Still, as Galliani hinted, the true reason for his appointment wasn't just performance. After a bold experiment like Fatih Terim, Milan yearned to return to its roots, a more traditional identity. Perhaps no one could have foreseen it at the time, but that press conference marked the beginning of a new golden era. Don Carlo, following in Sacchi's footsteps, would lead Milan into their second age of dominance, building an empire that lasted 8 years. Don Carlo is a man who believes that leadership is not about authority, but about relationships. A leader's strength doesn't come from yelling and screaming, he says. It lies in staying calm and composed. There's no doubt that he has a natural talent for building relationships. To him, a coach must understand that each player has a different character and different motivations. What's right is not for the players to adapt to me, but for me to adapt to them, he explains. My style isn't about imposing my demands. I want to convince my players, even if it takes more time. If we listen to what the players he's worked with have said about him, there's little doubt that he's succeeded in doing just that. Take Andrea Pirlo, for instance. Before crossing paths with Ancelotti, he was an attacking midfielder. Today, he says, "Ancelotti was like a father to me. He helped me play my best football in a deeper role. He changed my position and changed my career. Even though I didn't know how to defend, he put me in front of the backline and just told me to use my brain." Another person who knew Carlo inside out was the legendary captain Paolo Maldini. As a youngster, Paolo was Carlo's teammate. Later, at the twilight of his career, he played under him as manager. "People say I'm the flag of Milan. If that's true, then Carlo was the wind that made me wave," says the captain. Playing with him and playing for him, both were always easy. He made things easier for everyone. As Carlo believes, this job is mostly about persuasion. Even Gennaro Gattuso, who's known for his combative nature and wasn't particularly fond of Carlo's football ideas or training methods, acknowledged his communication skills. Sure, Carlo might be from 3 or 4 generations ago, but he still holds the key to getting inside a player's mind. That's why he's still the best at what he does. It would be wrong to say Ancelotti's early days at Milan were without controversy. But the biggest opposition didn't come from the stands or the press. It came from the club president himself. Silvio Berlusconi firmly believed that Milan should always play entertaining, attacking football. He would regularly visit the training ground and insist that the team should line up in a 4-4-2 formation. The media and the general football public largely shared that view. So much so that after a 1-0 win at San Siro over Ajax in 2003, Dutch legend Johan Cruyff criticized Ancelotti's side for being boring and overly defensive. Carlo replied sharply, "If Johan wants entertainment, he should go to the movies." And yet, what allowed Ancelotti to stay in charge for 8 years was his ability to deliver results, and to do so quickly. We're talking about a time before the 4-2-3-1 became mainstream. Back then, nearly every team played with 2 strikers. Milan had 2 of the best strikers of that era, Andriy Shevchenko and Filippo Inzaghi. Just behind them was Rui Costa, whom Terim had brought over from Fiorentina. Ancelotti placed him as the tip of the diamond in a 4-4-2 formation, flanked by Gennaro Gattuso on the right and Clarence Seedorf on the left. In the summer of 2002, Milan made a blockbuster signing, Alessandro Nesta from Lazio. He became the new partner of Captain Maldini at the heart of the defence. With Simic and Kaladze as fullbacks, and Brazilian Dida replacing Abbiati in goal, Ancelotti had crafted a solid backline. In his first full season in charge, Don Carlo implemented a 4-4-2 diamond formation and led Milan back to the summit of Europe after a 9-year absence. In the 2003 Champions League final at Old Trafford, Milan beat Juventus on penalties, with Dida saving 3 spot kicks to become the hero of the night. It was Ancelotti's first trophy in a career that would soon be filled with many more. The following year, 2 new Brazilian signings elevated Milan to another level. One was the handsome 20-year-old Kaká from Sao Paulo. The other, regarded by many as the greatest right-back of all time, Cafu. These 2 players dramatically boosted the team's attacking capabilities. Milan would go on to comfortably win the Serie A title, finishing 11 points clear of Roma. With Cafu on the right, Maldini on the left and Nesta in the centre, the only missing piece in the backline was an aggressive aerial dominator. That gap was filled in the summer of 2004 with the arrival of Jaap Stam, one of the most feared centre-backs of his time. With his addition, Milan assembled one of the most intimidating defensive lines in recent history. One of the greatest strikers of that era, Ruud van Nistelrooy, described it like this.
I played against AC Milan in the San Siro, and there was a back 4 of Cafu and Jaap Stam, he went to Milan, Maldini and Nesta. So this is like, that was interesting, you know. And there was Gattuso in front, you know. It's like, he's like, wow, I'm gonna kill you when you get the ball. And then Pirlo, he's fantastic.
Lastly, Argentine striker Hernan Crespo was brought in on loan from Chelsea, a perfect temporary replacement for the injured Filippo Inzaghi. When people speak of legendary Milan squads, this is the team that comes to mind first. Ironically, apart from the Supercoppa Italiana, this squad didn't win a single major trophy. What made them legendary was perhaps the fact that they were the strongest team in the most played football video game of the era. Back to the final. One thing is certain, Milan fans would remember this team as a huge disappointment. Assembled in the summer of 2004, they walked into the 2005 Champions League final in one of the world's most beautiful cities as overwhelming favourites. And they showed why, with 3 goals in the first 45 minutes. But the English hadn't had their final say. That evening at Istanbul's Ataturk Olympic Stadium, Liverpool produced a miracle. In just 6 minutes, they came back from 3-0 down to draw level and eventually won the trophy on penalties. After such an epic night, the only thing people want to talk about is the winner. No one really cares about the despair of the losing side. I guess the world never truly wondered what the people behind that legendary Milan squad felt in the wake of such a traumatic night, except perhaps those closest to them. And yet, there is no greater teacher in life than failure. Achievements may elevate us, but it is failure that makes us grow. The question is, could Ancelotti and that legendary Milan team turn this crushing defeat into a valuable lesson? No one spoke that night. It was complete silence. We were like ghosts. We were depressed. All summer long, I kept waking up thinking, no, this can't be real. 6 minutes of madness. 6 minutes of madness, and we lost everything we had. Isn't that exactly why football is such a magnificent game? There's never a guarantee that the better team will win. Sometimes you can dominate nearly the entire 90 minutes, and yet, in just 6 minutes, everything vanishes. You can't hold on to it. You can't stop it. This game is played by humans, and every human emotion has its place in football. But for Milan, the emotional collapse was only one part of the challenge. The summer of 2006 saw the Italian sports scene erupt in chaos. The Calciopoli scandal had cast a dark cloud over the future of Italian football, and Milan was no exception. There were even rumours that the club could be banned from the Champions League, among other severe sanctions. Time was already working against them. This was an ageing squad, and keeping it together wouldn't be easy. Hernan Crespo, who had filled in during Pippo's absence, returned to Chelsea after his loan spell. The following season, the ageing and increasingly sluggish Jaap Stam left the team. But Milan's biggest loss, without a doubt, was the baby-faced assassin they had signed from Dynamo Kiev back in 1999. Andriy Shevchenko scored 175 goals in official matches for Milan, claimed the Serie A top scorer title twice, and won the Ballon d'Or in 2004. He had become a symbol of the club. For most fans, imagining Milan without Sheva was unthinkable. Yet Roman Abramovich, the billionaire owner of Chelsea, paid £30 million to pry him away from the San Siro. In losing him, Milan lost a massive part of their firepower. As the 2006-2007 season began, another blow came with the verdict from the Calciopoli investigation. While Milan hadn't directly manipulated referees like Juventus, they were found guilty of attempting to influence referee observers. The result? An 8-point penalty at the start of the season. Building title-winning squads over long domestic campaigns had never been Ancelotti's strong suit. With that handicap in place, shifting full focus to the Champions League was clearly the most logical move. But Don Carlo had to tweak his diamond just a bit. Ricardo Oliveira, brought in from Real Betis to replace Shevchenko, never managed to make the expected impact in Milan, and he had a valid reason for that. The Brazilian striker's sister had been kidnapped for ransom and held hostage for 5 months. Ricardo recalls, "I couldn't play football during that time. I couldn't focus because I didn't even know if my sister was alive." This left Carlo with only Pippo Inzaghi and Alberto Gilardino, signed the previous year from Parma, as striker options. He initially tried playing them together, but it didn't take long to realize the duo lacked chemistry. Moreover, by the mid-2000s, two striker systems were becoming outdated. Even die-hard supporters of the 4-4-2, like Arsene Wenger and Alex Ferguson, had started to move on. And given that Carlo was a firm believer in adapting the system to the players, not the other way around, no one expected him to stick stubbornly to tradition. That's how the famous Christmas tree was born. One of the two, either Gilardino or Inzaghi, would play as the lone striker. Ancelotti rotated them throughout the season and managed to get solid contributions from both. Behind the lone striker was the devastating duo of prime Kaká and Seedorf. The Brazilian was one of the top 2 or 3 players in the world at the time. His game flowed like water, so smooth, so pure. He had so many weapons that stopping him felt impossible. Shooting, passing, dribbling, right foot, left foot, pace, intelligence. He was the complete package. His partner, Clarence Seedorf, was the definition of underrated in those days. Built like a bull, tireless, and just as technical. If he had been born 20 or 25 years later, he'd probably be considered priceless in today's market. More than that, Clarence was one of Milan's many on-field leaders, a man who spoke 6 languages. "My role was to be the bridge between the coaches and the players. That was my form of natural leadership," he said. If the pointed tip of the Christmas tree was formed by this duo, the base, the trunk, was just as crucial in launching attacks. Over the past 5 years, Pirlo had fully embraced his role. Baton in hand, he orchestrated the entire team like a maestro. The pace of the game always flowed at his command. His unmatched ability to control tempo earned him the nickname the metronome. There was a seemingly effortless elegance in everything he did. Of course, you can't play this kind of game with artists like Pirlo alone. To give Regista some comfort, you need warriors like Gennaro and Ambrosini beside him, especially Gennaro Gattuso, who was known to lose his temper at times. "When I lost a game, I used to break everything I could get my hands on," Gennaro said. Today, players lose and then post selfies online. An opponent trying to carry the ball past midfield was like an invading force crossing enemy lines. At least in the eyes of Gattuso and Ambrosini. Their job was to make Andrea Pirlo's life easier, to allow him to conserve his energy and dictate the game with precision. With the midfield so densely packed, the team needed width and attacking support from the fullbacks. On the right, Cafu was tailor-made for that role, but he was now 37 years old. His backup, Massimo Oddo, delivered several performances in the Champions League that made sure Cafu's absence wasn't deeply felt. On the left, Ancelotti placed his trust in Czech fullback Marek Jankulovski. He was one of the most overlooked and underappreciated players in that squad, yet he logged the 3rd most minutes after Pirlo and Kaká that season. Marek was consistent, disciplined, the kind of player you'd expect from Central Europe. Nothing less. And finally, there was the ageless defensive duo. With Jankulovski now handling the left flank, the captain moved back into central defence to once again partner Alessandro Nesta. There's no need for embellishment here. If you were to name the 10 greatest defenders of all time, you simply couldn't leave out Nesta and Maldini. This setup, where both fullbacks pushed forward, couldn't have survived without their presence at the back. And behind them stood Dida, a penalty-saving specialist. The Christmas tree formation wasn't just a tactical shift, It was Milan's answer to heartbreak, and their renewed path to the top of Europe. Milan's Champions League campaign began with a fairly manageable group stage. Their opponents were AEK Athens, Lille, and Anderlecht. After the first 4 matches, Milan had conceded only 1 goal and collected 10 points, enough to secure qualification for the round of 16. Although the remaining 2 matches were mere formalities, Milan lost both, away to AEK and at home to Lille. They didn't score a single goal in either match. Despite topping the group, they didn't look like title contenders. Without Shevchenko, Milan were no longer seen as favourites for the trophy, just dark horses. In the round of 16, they faced Celtic, and at least in this matchup, Milan were clear favourites. The first leg in Scotland ended in a goalless draw. At San Siro, it would take one of Kaká's trademark slalom runs to break through the Scots' resistance. It was an unglamorous win, carried solely on the Brazilians' shoulders. Next up, Bayern Munich, who had eliminated Real Madrid in the previous round. The German side was coached by Ottmar Hitzfeld, a veteran manager who had already won this trophy with both Borussia Dortmund and Bayern. The first leg at San Siro was a 90-minute nerve-wracking affair. Milan dominated but couldn't pull away. Andrea Pirlo, known more for thinking than shooting, used that brilliant brain of his to strike the ball instead, and gave Milan the lead. But Bayern responded through their giant defender Van Buiten. As usual, Ancelotti tried to chew away his stress with relentless gum mashing. 5 minutes from time, Kaká earned a penalty from his compatriot Lucio and converted it. But in the 3rd minute of added time, Van Buiten struck again, this time with his weaker foot, levelling the score. The match, full of surprises, ended in Bayern's favour. Milan now had no choice but to win in Germany. A week later, the second leg took place in Munich. Don Carlo made just 1 change to his starting lineup. Though Bayern's defence was dominant in the air, Van Buiten was a slow-footed centre-back, so Ancelotti replaced Gilardino with Inzaghi, famous for his runs behind the defence. According to Ancelotti, at this level, matches are often decided by the smallest of margins, and this one change would give him exactly what he wanted in Munich. In the 27th minute, Seedorf put Milan ahead. 4 minutes later, the Dutchman released Pippo through on goal, and just like that, it was 2-0. Milan had achieved their desired score far earlier than expected, and from that point on, they held on tightly to their lead. The final was now just 2 matches away. Yes, eliminating Bayern Munich was a major achievement for Milan, but the most sensational team of that year's quarter-finals was Manchester United, who had just demolished fellow Italian side Roma. Under Sir Alex Ferguson, the Red Devils were always one of the most dangerous teams in the competition. This time, Sir Alex had blended the experience of Giggs and Scholes with the youthful energy of a young Wayne Rooney and Cristiano Ronaldo. This new-look United had put 7 goals past Roma at Old Trafford. And yes, you guessed it. If Milan wanted to reach the final, their last obstacle was Manchester United. The first leg in England turned into a goal-fest. It was one of the toughest nights in the careers of both goalkeepers, a match filled with action and drama that left viewers breathless. Manchester United clinched a 3-2 win with a stunning late goal from Rooney. But the fact that Kaká managed to steal the spotlight in a match of this magnitude said everything about how special he was. The most iconic moment of the night, and one of the most unforgettable goals in tournament history, came when the Brazilian tied Patrice Evra and Gabriel Heinze into knots before scoring a masterpiece. Going into the return leg at San Siro, the away goals rule kept Milan's hopes alive. Even a narrow 1-0 win would be enough to book their place in the final. But Milan started the match like a thunderstorm. Backed by their roaring home crowd, they came crashing down on United. A goal felt inevitable, and in the 11th minute, the same man stepped up again. Kaká scored his 10th goal of the Champions League campaign, sealing the Golden Boot before the tournament even ended. Before the half-hour mark, Seedorf made it 2-0. Goals poured down like the heavy rain that was drenching the city of Milan that night. In the 78th minute, Gilardino added a third, and United simply couldn't find a way out of San Siro. Call it fate or coincidence, but their opponent in the final would once again be that same cursed team, Liverpool, the very team that had inflicted a nightmare upon them 2 years earlier. Imagining the tension in the Milan dressing room before the final in Athens is no easy task. Yes, this was a squad filled with experienced, battle-hardened leaders, but they had every reason to feel nervous. Ancelotti would later explain the mood before the match. they were really tense. I could feel it. Sometimes, instead of firing your players up, you have to calm them down. That's what I tried to do before the game. Indeed, had Milan walked onto the pitch fueled by revenge, the outcome might have been disastrous once again. But they managed to stay composed, even Gattuso, and played with intelligence. For the final, Carlo once again chose Inzaghi to lead the line. Pippo was an odd character. His technical ability on the ball was extremely limited, so much so that nobody even bothered to argue with him about it. He was rarely onside, constantly frustrating teammates trying to pick him out with a pass. And he was injury-prone too. Had he overcome those issues earlier in his career, he might have gone down as an even greater player than he already was. And yet, he was an incredible finisher. On the evening of May the 23rd, 2007, Pippo was already 33. Like many others in that squad, this might have been his final shot at glory. And finally, he picked the perfect night to time his runs right. With 2 goals in a Champions League final, he stamped his name on history. This time, there would be no penalties. Captain Maldini and his teammates lifted Milan's 7th Champions League trophy that night in Athens. Once upon a time, AC Milan were used to being the kings of Europe. If this journey moved you, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories that bring football history to life.